So today I'm going to be taking a look at a Grand Seiko, which of course everybody wants to learn about Grand Seiko. Definitely a hot brand right now, but this is a model that I think doesn't get a lot of love, doesn't get a lot of coverage, and I think that's mainly due to the fact that it's more of a dress style watch. It is very much simple, it's at a smaller size, and it's not something I think a lot of people kind of think about when it comes to getting kind of a luxury watch. So let's take a look at it, see what it's all about. We have a diameter of 37 millimeters, a lug to lug of about 44, height of 11.8, and a 19 millimeter lug width. A couple of other general specifications for the watch. We have the caliber 9S64 in here. We're gonna have a 72-hour power reserve. I tested mine the other day and I actually got 75 hours out of it. We have a 24 joule movement, a stated accuracy of +5 to -3 seconds a day when static, and for some reason +10, -1 through kind of like normal usage. I've reported around like +3 seconds a day, which definitely is not bad at all. Not spring drive, but not bad. Again, a manual wind movement here, and we do have a hacking seconds hand, all that goodness. Box type sapphire crystal there with an inner AR coating. And other than that, we have Zaratsu polish, I believe around 30 meters of water resistance, definitely more of a dress watch. And other than that, the watch retails at $4,300 when new. So moving on to the dial, and I really don't think my lighting situation here really does the kind of vibrance and the color and really all of that justice. So I will throw in some more videos of like kind of the watch in natural lighting in a more natural state, dealing with what we have right now. You can see a very plain, simple layout. We really only have kind of the double marker at 3, 6, 9, 12, single markers everywhere else, a simply painted on minute track there. As we can see, we have the applied Grand Seiko logo there, which is really nice because the presence of Zaratsu finish really actually just creates a mirror polish. So it really does catch reflections really nicely, play with the light, especially if you take photos of your watches. It just really is a joy to work with. As we can see, we have the classic kind of Grand Seiko sword style hand. We kind of have this really cool creamish, off-white, very light colored dial here. Not something you see a lot of watch companies go for, and again, my lighting is not really doing it justice. I'll add some video in later. But just looking at it, I think one of the most interesting parts is I think you can really tell here, but the dial itself actually seems to have a gentle curve to it. If I bring something in here, like the Seiko SARD that I'm wearing, I think you can see by comparison the dial looks very flat, but the Grand Seiko actually has some dimensionality to it, has a little bit of curvature to it, which is really interesting because I haven't really seen that done before. But really, other than that, not a lot to talk about. Very simply, very plainly done. It is, by all matters of measurement, a dress dedicated watch. I think some straps that I will put it on later can kind of challenge that idea and make it a little bit more casual, but it very much is a clean, no-nonsense watch, and I think you really have to go on a more macro level to appreciate how much detail there is on this watch face. Zooming in on the dial, we really do start to see that there's kind of like this eggshell texturing to it that starts to come out, and I just found that most watches that use this kind of eggshell patterning, it adds a lot of dimensionality to the color depth, just kind of makes the dial able to almost change colors. As we can see that the Grand Seiko lettered out there in this kind of classic Grand Seiko Gothic type script. I just personally like the font of it, and also it does have a kind of dimensionality to it. It doesn't look flatly printed on the dial. I know a lot of people kind of don't understand what Zaratsu polishing is, and for those that don't, I will tell you it is something you have to, one, care about detail, and two, actually see it in the metal to understand. But if we're just following around the second hand here, we see it's perfectly reflected, not distorted at all, in every little bit of marker that it comes across. It's just a perfect reflection of the hand, and as if you can see in the hands, it's the same thing. You do see the reflection of the actual minute hand in the hands there. Taking a quick look at that minute marker track, we can see it's in the same black ink as used for this Grand Seiko logoing right there, and it still has that same bulbous kind of very wet ink black looking quality. There's just so much detail in this watch. As you can see, that minute's hand is actually capped at the end, and it's just perfectly mirror polished along the entire length of it. It's just a sight to behold. It's really interesting to see. Second hand goes out and just touches, just kisses that minutes track. So everything here was designed with intention, with purpose, and it all came together and just ended up looking really, really nicely. And at this higher magnification, you really do start appreciating the depth and dimensionality added by those markers. They are really tall on the dial, and and especially in certain lightings, you know, the shine goes away. They almost become black, as you can see. And that is just all based on the lighting that's there, the actual fact that they're polished in such a way. The angles to them actually cast shadows in some areas, light in others. So it's this constant light play. Grand Seiko is very popular about bringing inspiration from, you know, seasons. There's light and shadow is a really big theme in just their watches and design aesthetics in general. So it definitely comes to life here in these watches, and it's really a sight to behold. It's something I can't completely communicate through camera, but man, it is cool. So moving on to kind of the case of this watch, and Grand Seiko did really keep it simple in a lot of ways, but also added some classic design flair, and let's get into it. So as you can see, we have really an all polished case. There are no brush reliefs or anything, high polish everywhere you can see. We do have a nice Grand Seiko signed crown there. We have drilled lug holes, which I love to see on pretty much any watch ever. You can see there's a kind of turn into the lug here, and you can also again see that Zaratsu finishing, a perfect mirror reflection of what I'm recording with. See, there is a kind of bevel here where a polish meets another weirdly different polish and then goes into another polish. And what I really like about this kind of interesting sectioning here is that at a lot of angles it almost looks like the top of the lug is brushed, while this becomes almost like a chamfer. But in realistic terms, it's all polished, so it just depends on the angle that the light hits it. It just takes on a kind of different nature to the metal, which I think is just really fun. Overall, as with most Seiko cases, it's just designed very, very ergonomically. As you can see here, we do have a very, very large lug turn down. The lugs come to meet just about at the case back, if not slightly below, which is really nice, so it's going to wear really well on the wrist. You do have a nice little dome to the crystal, just adding to a little bit to the overall height. So instead of actually being 11.8 millimeters, it might be closer to 11 or slightly under 11. And just overall, it's a very, very simply done case, but definitely done well. It kind of just has a stance that sits well on the wrist. It is kind of almost a blank canvas to put anything in. This case is very common in most of Grand Seiko's Elegance collection, so that's just something to note. The crown is, I would say, not too large, not too small, very good to grip, and that's good because this is a hand-winding watch. Moving on to the case back, and as you can see, we get a nice open case back, which is great because sometimes when you spend, you know, a couple $1,000s on a watch, you want to be able to see what's going on back there. And just zooming in so we can kind of appreciate the back more. One thing I really love is this ghosted Grand Seiko logo. In many lighting situations, it almost completely disappears as it does right there. But you get it at the right angle and it just really comes out and plays, and it's just really, really fun. It's pretty much the perfect execution of a case back logo like this. I know Grand Seiko doesn't do it for all their case backs, but realistically they should, because it looks amazing. It actually looks really, really high quality when it just comes out out of pretty much nowhere and just kind of almost says hi to you. So that's really fun. And as you can see, we have pretty great finishing here. It's very, very finely done. Something that almost you won't notice because most likely you won't take it off your wrist that much. But you can see we have very, very vibrant jewels popping out of the back of the movement there. As we can see, we have this nice Grand Seiko logo there done in the kind of a blue filling. Grand Seiko kind of has this blue as their, I guess, color of choice, their kind of brand color. Most of the time it comes in a blue packaging. The boxes are blue. Most of the boutiques have a lot of this dark royal blue in them. And other than just the Grand Seiko logo done in the blue relief, we actually have all this information done in gold. And I do believe Grand Seiko uses real gold to fill those in. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that's real gold, which is just kind of nice. I guess it adds kind of to the longevity, adds to the fact that this is without a doubt a luxury watch. And overall, it just really looks nice. Moving on to how the strap is, and again, we get this kind of crocodile leather done in this very nice matte black. You don't see a lot of, at least companies in my point of view, doing kind of a stock matte alligator strap, which I think is just a really nice addition. I think it works well with the dress watch vibe. It kind of tones it down. If it was shiny, it would definitely be a little bit more dressy leaning, but I think this kind of lighter coloration matte style black kind of lets it be a little bit more casual. Moving on to the buckle, we can see it is really, really well done. We do have this kind of like hammered background with his nice bold Grand Seiko polished relief in there. Really nicely done buckle. I do think the kind of design overall is a little bit dated, but nothing to complain about. So moving on to how this watch wears. Earlier I was wearing my Seiko SBGW231 and just as you can see, this is definitely a pure white dial because this is actually enamel versus this very much cream off-white colored leaning dial. And in contrast to my SBGW231, this is very much a smaller watch. It has a much smaller footprint. I think it does look really, really nice on my wrist here. It curves really, really nicely to the wrist, conforms pretty much perfectly. This is a very, very comfortable watch. You're not gonna have any problem with it not wearing well, really. Again, just looking at how this watch is on the wrist, as you can see, it does conform really, really well. Just sits into the wrist there really, really nicely. And again, the 37mm size, which is one of the only, well really it is the only current mechanical at this size right now in the Grand Seiko, catalog. It is nice to have. It is something I think they should do more of for us people with smaller wrists who like these smaller watches. And I think, as most people can agree, it just looks proportionally well on my wrist. I think the case shape kind of just takes a back seat, lets it be elegant, lets it be slim, and yeah, the Grand Seiko looks good. So moving on to a couple different straps. Here is a nice, really kind of almost darker but also lighter brown leather strap from B&R Bands. You got that nice, really almost whitish cream relief stitching that I think goes really well with the dial itself. This definitely is a more casual look and feel to the watch. I think it does complement the cream color of the watch really nicely. As you can see there on the wrist, I think it does work really well with the watch. The brown is really playful, really fun, goes well with a lot of colors, blues, blacks, grays. Brown, very versatile. With the cream, I think it works really well. Here is my personal favorite combination for the watch. It is the one I wear the watch on most of the time, and it is this very, very dark kind of hunter British style racing green from cheapest NATO straps, funnily enough. I think this strap was only like 12, 14 bucks, but I think it just works really, really well on this watch. Cheapest NATO straps is one of those more affordable companies that still do 19mm, so that's really, really nice. Yeah, I just think it works really well on the watch. Kind of, again, does make it a little bit more casual. The green goes really well with the cream, and that's one other combination you can go for. And last but certainly not least, we have this crown and buckle chevron strap in their Oxford color. It has this really nice textured weave of blue and white and kind of like lighter blue. And I think it just plays really well with the cream dial on the Grand Seiko. It is a one-piece style strap, so it makes the watch kind of innately more casual. It is kind of really good to be just kind of a summer strap when you don't want to get all your leather ruined by the summer heat. And overall, it's just really comfortable on the wrist, and I really like how it pairs with the watch. So looking at this watch, we can really see how in the sunlight it actually comes out as more of a gentle cream. I mean, as you move the watch around, that Zaratsu finish just really comes out and plays. It just really looks nice. Overall, I think here you can just really see how each marker just plays with the light, really just shines, just comes to life really under natural sunlight. And that's something I just really like about the dial, how just bright it is at times. And here, giving kind of a different look at the watch, you can see that under like a more shaded region, the cream kind of tones down a little. It becomes gentler, it becomes softer. That's what I really like about the watch. It really just has different kinds of, I guess, moods to the dial. So moving on to pros and cons of this watch, and starting with pros, of course, and again, the sizing is amazing. I love any watch under 40mm, and this at 37, I think it is just a great size. It's literally one of the smallest watches in Grand Seiko's catalog, and it fits well. I love the elegance case shape. I love how nicely it conforms to the wrist. I love the sizing of it on my wrist. So I think, all in all, I think they did a really nice job making this a smaller size. If they would have done it at maybe 40, 41, 42mm, at that point I think it would have kind of just lost a little bit of the elegance, lost a little bit of the kind of almost beauty behind it, really. And other than that, again, it's hard to communicate through this video, but it's just the finishing of it. Zaratsu polish is something else. It shines different. It reflects so great. Taking watch pictures is awesome because if there's any type of color around it, it just soaks up the color. It just mirror reflects everything. And it's just something you really have to see for yourself. You really have to take a long, hard look. You have to take it out into the sunshine, take it out into the shade, and just really see what kind of life the metal takes on. And it's pretty cool. One of the other coolest features about this watch, I think, is the power reserve. Having 75 hours is just fun really. You don't have to wind it as much, not putting as much stress on the crown or anything. And overall, it's just nice to not have to worry about it. You wind it like twice a week, and less than that if you don't wear it too often. And even so, like, if you have like kind of a dressy, more, suit and tie oriented job, you can wind it up fully on Friday. It'd still be working on Monday when it's time to go back to work. And I think that's just a cool feature of the watch. Now moving on to cons, and again, no watch is perfect, and this watch is no exception. Now, although it is beautiful, well made, it is classic in its design, it can also be a little bit boring, a little bit plain. It has no text at the 6 o'clock, so it can kind of look empty if you're just used to that kind of regular balance in a watch. It also has no frills about it. It doesn't have a date. It doesn't have a complication. It's very, very minimalistic. The kind of interest in the watch comes from the finishing, from the kind of unique coloration of the cream tone. And for some people that might not be enough, and if that's the case, that's okay. Go with maybe a spring drive model, so at least you have kind of the spring drive technology to keep you interested. Go with something with a textured dial. Go with a different brand. There's a lot out there, and this may not be the watch for you, and that's fine, but it still is a good watch. A couple other cons. I think the cream dial will be a con for some people. It is kind of a con for me. I don't think cream's as versatile as white is. I don't think the particular shade of cream either really matches with as many straps as I would like it to, in comparison to at least a pure white dial like this Sard here or something like that. So I would have liked to see it as a pure white. That's not what they were going for, I guess. But that's just something to note. Might not be something you love about the watch. I would definitely recommend trying to see it in person to try to kind of gauge if that coloration is for you. My final kind of gripe with this watch, and it's something a lot of watch companies do at this kind of luxury price point, is having a 19mm lug width. Rolex just came out with their new sub. That one has a 21mm lug width. JLC, they have the Reverso with a 19mm lug width. Grand Seiko, almost all their watches have either 19 or 21. Not a lot of them are at the 20mm. So a lot of companies do this. I don't know why. I don't know if 19 is like some weird number that looks better than 20 for some reason. But I don't think it's as much of a con anymore. There are some more companies that are starting to do 19mm straps. Like I showed you, Cheapest NATO Straps has some. Crown and Buckle has some. Barton Bands does a couple. So you do have some options. If nothing there floats your boat, you do have to go higher end, spend $40, $50, $60, $80 on a strap, which not a lot of people are jumping, for joy to have to do. But it is something to note. It is a little bit of a disappointment because if you have a bunch of 20mm straps already, you don't want to have to go out and buy a bunch of 19mm ones. Kind of just summing up this watch, and this in particular is not going to be a watch for everybody. It is almost a through and through dress watch. It's a very simple watch. It wears elegantly on the wrist. You can kind of dress it down with straps like this, kind of make it more casual. But in the end, if you're looking for something that can be worn in more sporty occasions and you're used to sport watches, this won't be for you. If you're looking just for a plain dress watch, it works perfectly. It's gorgeous. It slides under the cuff easily. It kind of also is interesting because not a lot of watches in that dress category are in a cream dial, so it kind of adds a little interest to the watch. But overall, it is a well-made watch. I think for the price they're asking of $4,300, it is pretty good value. There's not a lot of dedicated dress watches in that price bracket that I really know of. I mean, you can go obviously for a JLC if you go out a little bit higher in price. You can go for a Rolex for a little bit higher as well. But those stylings are very different than the styling here. This one is almost kind of more of a clean, dedicated dress watch package. And some will love that, some will hate it. I personally really do like it. Again, that Zaratsu finishing is almost worth it for the price itself. But again, this is a watch you're gonna have to see in person, try on for yourself, see if it speaks to you the way it should, because you shouldn't just love something because you are told to love it. You shouldn't think Zaratsu is amazing just because you've heard so many people think the same thing or say the same thing, really. I mean, these are all opinions. These are all the musings of other people. And in the end, it's going to be on your wrist, and you want to make sure you enjoy it. So I hope you got something out of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another one.